Chapter 182. The Dark Baldness Law. The immense blast from the exploding planet couldn't harm Saitama or King in the slightest. With King in his eight-gates state and Saitama in full serious mode, even a planet detonating before them was nothing to write home about. The two fought out into the depths of the universe, where even stars couldn't withstand more than a few exchanges before ripping themselves apart. As they sped past a tiny world, Saitama and King were suddenly pulled toward it. On the surface of the four, both of them felt an overwhelming, crushing force, the extreme pressure of that planet's crust. Even so, it only slowed them marginally. It did not stop them. King, however, found a far more effective response. He pressed his hand to the four's surface, attuned himself to the planet, and let a massive surge of energy pour out from within. In an instant, the entire four was wrapped in King's power, deforming and compressing continuously. When the compression finished, two silvery white knuckle dusters with biting, spiked edges gleamed on his fists. In seconds, King had refined the high-density material of the four into a weapon, right then and there. The strongest man on Earth had, on a whim, forged a planet-renowned material into his own arms. Saitama scratched his head in surprise. So you can make weapons like this. I'll try it too. He reached out and grabbed at the space beside him, literally pinching the void realm with his heaven-defying rule power and sheer grip strength. He tore space as if it were cloth and then molded it like clay, shaping a pair of knuckle dusters. I think this is how you mold it. I hope I did it right, he thought with a little unease. He slid the newly molded three onto his fists. They fit surprisingly well, and the bald Demon King brightened at once. All right, now we both have weapons. Let's go again. That day, countless intelligent species across the universe felt a fear they had never known. Those that had not yet learned to travel the stars were spared. They couldn't sense that terror. But the races capable of venturing into and observing the heavens trembled. They watched helplessly as familiar stars flared white and broke apart, as glittering regions of space were swallowed by sudden darkness. The most powerful civilizations, who could detect the aftershocks of Saitama and King's battle, kept their locations secret, terrified that revealing their coordinates would mark them for the two combatants. This was the legendary Dark Baldness Law. Chapter 183, Pointing and Gesturing. On a certain planet, after billions of years of gradual development, countless brilliant civilizations had risen and fallen. The one that now ruled the world had reached the stage of exploring the stars. On the command bridge, the planetary leader looked down at the army arrayed below. Behind him, thousands of warships thundered in unison. He bellowed, "Everyone, our astronomers report that two unknown entities, capable of fighting in space with physical bodies, are already less than 300,000 kilometers from our planet. That is a critically dangerous distance. For the survival of our civilization, for the future of our race, and to prevent our world from being destroyed, we must strike first. Behind us stands millions of years of accumulated wisdom. This fleet is the product of our entire civilization. That is our confidence and the guarantee for defending our home. Though these two foes can wage war in the starry sky, far beyond our imagination, we will not passively wait for death. Battle-hardened warriors, follow me." "Kill," came the shouted response. Tens of thousands of soldiers saluted at once and scrambled aboard the warships. For this civilization, everything hung in the balance. Whether peace would return depended on this single strike. 3,000 massive ships formed a perfect line in space. Rows of main cannons trained on the distant region, racked by energy storms. The muzzles glowed. The energy cannons were primed. "Fire," the leader ordered. Thousands of energy cannons erupted with earth-shaking power. Their beams swirled and fused in space, forming an incomparably vast energy shockwave that surged outward like a tidal wall. When that fusion wave slammed into the two unknown entities, a violent explosion blossomed instantly. The crews inside the fleet cheered, eyes bright with the hope of survival. But on the command bridge, the leader's face went ashen. He trembled, whispering, "It's over. It's all over." On the big screen, the energy signatures of the two unknowns didn't even flicker. It was as if the entire barrage had caused no damage at all. Then a golden light rippled outward, instantly covering tens of millions of miles. One by one, The high-tech constructs of the attacking fleet dissolved when touched by that light, collapsing into scattered mechanical parts that drift through space. The soldiers didn't even have time to react before a wave of crimson energy surged over them and hurled their bodies back to the planet. A fleet forged by the combined strength of a civilization dissolved with ease without ever seeing its primary targets. King didn't particularly care about that little display. To him and the bald man beside him, the bald demon king, the enemy's energy cannons had been nothing more than an itch. They made a quick decision: avoid inhabited planets and find a region nearly devoid of life to fight in. If King hadn't had extremely precise control over his energy just then, those soldiers might have been vaporized along with their ships when the golden light rippled out. Saitama casually wiped his face, flicking away the bloodstains. In an instant, all his wounds healed, and he felt his strength rise again. There were few words between the two, only the mutual hunger for a real fight, but this time they deliberately changed course, steering toward sectors where no life lingered. After a few minutes of skirmishing in empty space, King felt a faint, almost imperceptible tug. He looked up, and his pupils narrowed. Out among the stars, a bottomless darkness had opened, and surrounding light was being relentlessly drawn into it. The dark region was elliptical, ringed by trapped light that could not escape, while a massive pulling force poured from its center. A black hole, a special celestial phenomenon usually born from the collapse of an ultra-dense star, was before them. Its gravitational and tearing forces were so extreme that not even light could escape. Saitama's fist came down again. King didn't dodge. He took it with his face and his nose split, blood trickling down. Seizing the moment, King countered. His fist, blazing with golden light, struck the bald demon king's abdomen with brutal force. Boom! 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 Saitama was blasted backward. His body flew through space and crashed 1,000 kilometers away from the black hole. Something's pulling me? Saitama said, bewildered, as a tearing force began to grip him. He looked back and saw the bottomless darkness swallowing the stars. The attraction intensified to an extreme. He barely had time to think before the pull took him. He was sucked into the black hole. Even a force capable of annihilating matter and trapping light could not faze a shiny bald head. Saitama found himself stuck at the center of the black hole, spinning as the singularity rotated. He was blurred into afterimages, like something tumbling inside a cosmic washing drum. Amused, he waved back at King and shouted, "Oi, King, come over! This black hole's fun. It's just making me a little dizzy from the spinning." Surprise flashed across King's face. He arrived at the edge in an instant. A horrifying tearing force rolled over his body, but it could not rip apart his supremely strong physical form. He reached a hand into the darkness. The force on his palm was colossal, but it failed to shred him. "I see," King said, intrigued. "The density in here is pretty extreme." He picked at the black hole with a pair of small implements, devices made from compressed alloys, and prodded and pointed at the darkness as if it were merely a strange new toy. After playing in the black hole for a while, the bald demon king was getting bored. He yanked himself out of it with a forceful pull, ready to continue the fight. King grabbed the black hole and adapted to it in an instant. Then he flicked his wrist. In the next second, energy as vast as an ocean surged into the black hole, coloring it from the inside out. The hole that had been so deep even light couldn't escape from suddenly shone like the sun. With the continuous infusion of energy, it began to shrink and finally transformed into a pair of gloves that shimmered with black light. King slid them onto his hands. The gloves were fingerless, so they wouldn't interfere with the neutron star brass knuckles. Seeing this, Saitama hopped around in the void realm in displeasure. Hey, King, this is a bit much. You can't just loot gear mid-fight. I don't have anything." King shrugged with an indifferent tone. "I made these myself. If someone else can, you can too. Craft a few pieces to play with." King's words immediately deflated Saitama. He was just an ordinary human. How could he possibly turn a whole planet into equipment? If only I had gear like that. No sooner had the thought crossed his mind than the void realm in front of Saitama cracked, and a pair of gloves inexplicably fell out. "Yes, I got gloves too." King didn't even have the energy to complain. This was beyond freakish. Was it the terrifying effect of the rules themselves? Another round began. With both of them boosted by equipment, their fighting grew ever more violent. Every blow could shatter a planet. They fought for an indeterminate length of time. Star after star vanished under their blows, and the starlight thinned until the sky grew dim. Finally, after throwing a certain punch, Saitama suddenly felt drained and stopped, floating in the shattered void realm. He sat on a shard of space and scratched his hairless head. You know, how about we stop? I really can't beat you. I'm done with the games and the food. He was at his wit's end. As much as he loved a good fight, fighting like this forever wasn't the point. King's growth rate was absurdly fast. Even if he was hurt, he recovered the next second. They were close friends, so it wasn't going to turn into a real life-or-death battle, and Saitama didn't want to keep going. The hits hurt, and it was exhausting. Even a serious punch couldn't finish King. Better to just lie low. King stopped too. He was tired, not so much physically as mentally. With a thought, he deactivated his Deathgate state. The crimson steam faded and his body's surging instability quieted. Now came the exciting part. King took a deep breath and opened his status window. Gender, abilities, Emperor Engine, super speed regeneration, fine control, energy control, infinite evolution, indestructible soul. Strength, speed, 4,000. Stamina, 1,000. Spirit, 4. Note, the standard for entering the dragon level is for all attributes to reach 1,000. Evaluation. You have reached a realm unprecedented and unrepeatable, becoming a supreme level stat monster. Apart from Saitama, who is the rule itself, no opponent can be found. 4 million each? Looking at his sky-high total of 20 million attribute points, King couldn't help but chuckle. It was ridiculous, but expected after so much farming. He'd been going hard with the bald demon king out in the starry expanse for an hour or two. It would have been against the heavens if he hadn't gotten stronger. His stats were now more than 20 times what they'd been, his strength up by over 1,000-fold. As everyone said, stats weren't just simple addition. If this king fought the version of him from the end of the gods' battle, he might make the other explode by exhaling. At this level, he could probably storm the gods' high-dimensional realm and strike at their home turf. With that thought, King decided to go back and rest for a while. Once he was ready, he'd take the bald demon king with him to launch a crusade against the gods. After deciding to end the spar, King simply thought it, and Blast, who'd been standing by far away, teleported in. He guided the two of them through a silver-white spatial tunnel straight to Earth. Inside the tunnel, King couldn't help but remark that Blast was an incredibly useful human courier. Wherever they wanted to go, Blast could teleport them there instantly, no matter the distance. Chapter 185. Speak up, you silent one. 2 days later. Amid the surprised glances of passersby, a middle-aged man in a red Ronin robe, a toothpick tucked in his mouth and a sword at his hip, walked leisurely with a stoic expression. The reason for the attention was simple. This was the former S-Class Rank 4, now Rank 6, Atomic Samurai. Look, isn't that Atomic Samurai? It really is. I heard he always dresses like some wandering swordsman. He's got that old-school vibe. Yeah, he's S-Class Rank 6. Heard his swordsmanship's unreal, can slice a monster to pieces in an instant. Those praises almost lifted the corners of Atomic Samurai's mouth. The small comfort faded, however, when a nastier whisper struck his ears like a thrown stone. What's so great about him? Didn't he get trashed in that monster incident recently? If King, the strongest man on Earth, hadn't shown up, he'd be flat out on the ground. The kids thought they were whispering, but their words didn't escape a great swordsman who was also an S-Class hero. Atomic Samurai's face went cold. He felt the urge to stride over and correct them, but he held back. Forget it, they're not wrong. I don't want to make a spectacle of myself. He let the humiliation settle in. It was true. In that legendary battle, his pride, the atomic slash, had been easily countered by that blazing monster, the sun sperm. He'd been taken down in an instant by a single overwhelming blow. And that same sun sperm, the creature that had almost killed him, now lived as a pet in the home of One Punch Man. For a swordsman who measured himself by skill and honor, the whole thing was an unbearable sting. He found a small restaurant and sat alone. He hadn't eaten all morning, and the empty feeling in his gut stopped his thoughts from sharpening. He ordered a few dishes, but picked at them absently, staring at the spotless tabletop as if into an abyss. Ever since that battle, he'd been turning the same question over and over. Was his path of the sword the right one, or was the very foundation of his way flawed? His pride, his technique, everything that defined him, had it all been exposed as useless? A deep sigh escaped him as the food arrived. The dishes smelled and looked good, but nothing registered. It was like chewing wax. Then, out of the corner of his eye, he saw a familiar, imposing figure. Tall, blonde hair, and an aura so dense it seemed to press down on the room. King? Atomic Samurai's chest tightened. Why is he here? He ran a hand to the sword at his waist, and something in him solidified. Seeking guidance from someone far stronger wasn't shameful. He wanted to know, what is a true sword? What is the real way of the blade? With that thought, he shoved the food into his mouth and swallowed it in a few hurried bites, wiped his lips, and rose. King was at a table nearby, sulking over a pricey meal he'd seen online. The face he was making got greener with every bite. Damn it, it's expensive and terrible. Influencer restaurants, what junk. He'd only come out to relax these past 2 days. Once he'd rested enough, he planned to drag the bald demon king along, storm the fray, and go after God. King, what a coincidence. You're eating here too. The voice was uncertain. King looked up and, seeing the Ronin garb, recognized him instantly. Oh, Atomic Samurai. Even before the words finished, Atomic Samurai felt tremors run through every fiber of his body. It was like a small, fluffy rabbit confronting a top predator. The fear turned his limbs to jelly and his speech to stammers. He forced himself to swallow the awe. This wasn't his fault alone. Under King's passive skill, infinite evolution, King's power had surged beyond the level of ordinary humans. People couldn't help but feel awe, instinctive reverence for the strongest. Atomic Samurai's body betrayed him, and the stuttering made him feel even more ridiculous. King watched him with curiosity. He didn't expect to run into a fellow S-class hero while trying to enjoy a meal. The world was small. Fate had a way of showing up unannounced. Atomic Samurai's anxiety rode up until he unconsciously gripped his sword and let a sharp aura leak out. The air around him felt edged and dangerous. King's face cooled. This guy came over, called my name, and now he's bristling like he's ready to fight, looking for trouble, isn't he? King didn't want to hurt the swordsman. He was so weak it would take barely a flick of a finger. But if the man insisted, King wouldn't hesitate to teach him a lesson. Atomic Samurai's fear reached his jaw. He bit down hard on his hand, and to drive himself out of the paralyzed awe, he dug his right hand into the flesh of his thigh and twisted hard. Pain flared. His face twitched. With that raw, immediate pain, his trembling eased, and he snapped back to himself. "Speak up, you damned mouth," he thought, chastising himself inwardly as sweat beaded along his temples. The trick worked. He was back, shakily but present. Atomic Samurai broke into a cold sweat, marveling at how King's presence had nearly stripped away his will. This is King's power, the strongest man on earth. One look, and I was about to lose my resistance. He steadied himself, fingers still resting on his sword, and forced his voice forward. Chapter 186, still no different from ants on the ground. For a moment, Atomic Samurai finally understood the scale of King's power. Before, he only knew King was far stronger than he was. He had no real sense of how much stronger. Now he understood what a truly powerful person felt like. A true powerhouse could suppress someone simply by standing there and radiating pressure. In King's presence, Atomic Samurai, one of the great swordsmen, couldn't even find the courage to draw his blade. He felt soft and helpless, like a trembling little rabbit. "What is it, Atomic Samurai? Do you need something from me?" King's low, steady voice rolled over him like thunder. It snapped Atomic Samurai out of his daze. His expression became serious and solemn. He inhaled and said earnestly, "King, I have a request. Could we spar? I want to see where my swordsmanship falls short." King blinked. He'd instinctively been ready to refuse. This wasn't worth his time. The gap between them was enormous. A spar would teach the younger hero nothing. Under the overwhelming weight of sheer stats, techniques were useless. King felt he had nothing to teach. Most of his combat prowess came from the Emperor Fist, and from transcendent stats rather than elaborate techniques. Then the system pinged into being and offered options for this trivial matter. Ding! Congratulations to the 9 for triggering options. Option 1. Accept Atomic Samurai's request and spar with him like an adult playing with a child, letting him feel the flaws in his swordsmanship. The only requirement, avoid accidentally crushing Atomic Samurai to death. Option 1. Systemide. Option 2. Refuse Atomic Samurai's request, enjoy your time, and let Atomic Samurai return to pursue an epiphany in swordsmanship by himself, teaching him that only one's own strength is true strength and that following others' paths is unwise. Option 2. Reward, random system item. Option 3. Forcefully reject and humiliate Atomic Samurai, telling him he is nothing without strength and to get out of the 9's sight. Breathing the same air as him is a disgrace. Option 3. Reward, Battle Bliss title. Battle Bliss title increases all attributes by 2% during combat. The boost disappears automatically after leaving combat. King stared. He'd never seen 3 options at once. Option 3 was immediately out of the question. While he could be mischievous, he wasn't someone who bullied the weak. Option 1 and Option 2 were really just accept or refuse, and the rewards were basically the same. After a moment's thought, he chose Option 1. He was curious to see just how wide the gap between his level and a dragon-level hero really was. Fine, I'll accept your request. Atomic Samurai brightened at once. He bowed deeply. Thank you so much. When shall we begin? King glanced at the half-eaten trendy meal beside him and was about to toss it when the image of a certain old man flashed through his mind. He fell silent for 2 seconds before answering, sounding a bit helpless. No rush. Wait until I finish my meal. He didn't want to waste food. Every grain came from effort, but the restaurant's chef had been halfway cruel, turning good ingredients into something barely edible. King finished in a few bites, then left with Atomic Samurai and flew out to the distant suburbs. After the earth-shattering clash with the bald Demon King, starting a baby-level fight with a dragon-level hero felt oddly anticlimactic. They landed in the suburbs and stepped onto soft yellow sand. King looked at Atomic Samurai across from him. The man's presence was so faint it was almost negligible. The expression on King's face grew stranger. Was Atomic Samurai just that weak, or was he simply too strong? The difference in their presences wasn't just strong versus weak. It was a gulf like the difference between Mike Tyson and an ant. Even with Atomic Samurai standing directly in front of him, King still perceived him like an ant on the ground. Chapter 187, Utter Teasing and Crushing. To avoid accidentally killing Atomic Samurai with a single wave of his hand, King crooked a finger and signaled for him to make the first move. Come on, hit me with your strongest attack. Let me feel your swordsmanship. King's real reason for asking was simple. He wanted to gauge the strength of Atomic Samurai's techniques. Atomic Samurai bristled at being asked to strike first. He was a famed swordmaster, recognized as a sword saint, but the moment he saw who stood opposite him, the insult vanished. Fine. If I'm the weaker one, then I should strike first. He drew the long sword at his waist. The instant it left its scabbard, a blinding, razor-cold light stabbed their vision. Then, King, brace yourself. This is my ultimate killing move, Atomic Slash. Atomic Samurai stepped forward. The blade blurred into a torrent of afterimages, tens of thousands of slashes in the space of a heartbeat. Invisible sword marks should have raked across King's body, but King didn't flinch or parry. He simply stood there. Atomic Samurai watched, aghast, even biting down on the toothpick in his mouth. Are you kidding me? Facing the strongest man on Earth, Atomic Samurai had run through every possibility. That King would block with superior technique, that his overwhelming power would interrupt the technique, that King would counter and stop the attack. He had never expected King to let the whole thing land without any defense at all. King lowered his head, inspected his clothes, not a rip, not a mark, and asked in genuine confusion, "Hasn't it started yet?" Atomic Samurai's face fell. Not a single wound had appeared. His high ponytail seemed to droop. "It's already over," he muttered. King, who hadn't felt so much as a scratch, as if gentle breezes had brushed him, couldn't help but feel a little stunned. Atomic Samurai's all-out atomic slash hadn't even nicked his garments. King's clothes were no ordinary fabric. They were formed from his life energy, far tougher than regular cloth. He kept silent, surprised. He had expected Atomic Samurai to be strong, but not this weak. Maybe you should try again, King offered awkwardly. Blood rushed to Atomic Samurai's head. His grip tightened on the hilt. Am I really this weak? Is there no way to rattle this man? No, he wouldn't accept defeat. If he could find his way, his own path of the sword, he might still stand a chance. A true warrior must believe in his invincibility. He raised his blade high, enunciating each word as if drawing a line in the air, his eyes razor sharp. Then, King, please enlighten me. He unleashed another, tens of thousands of slashes, the world filled with cold, gleaming sword marks sweeping toward King. To ordinary eyes, Atomic Samurai's speed would have seemed impossibly fast, blades flickering into afterimage. But to King, every movement was slow, every arc and exertion of muscle visible in minute detail. His reaction and strength were absolute. King extended a single finger. As each blade came, he simply tapped it aside with that fingertip. One by one, the torrents of slashes were deflected gently. After only a moment, Atomic Samurai froze, expression utterly stunned. A faint breeze stirred the yellow sand at their feet. The rustle of cloth filled the air. His wandering swordsman robe lifted lightly in the wind. Then, with a harsh metallic clang, his sword shattered into a shower of flying fragments. Atomic Samurai's mouth curved upward in a pained, bitter smile, eyes full of reluctant helplessness. He bowed deeply to King. As expected, of the legendary strongest man on Earth, he said, to break my atomic slash like that. Atomic Samurai admits defeat. He was convinced. From his perspective, every one of his slashes had been stopped by a single finger, repeated over and over. That could mean only one thing. His opponent had never taken him seriously. From start to finish, it had been a complete humiliation, a crushing mockery. For a great swordmaster, it was a bitter, laughable defeat. For the first time in his life, Atomic Samurai felt his sword Tao entirely negated. This wasn't an outside negation. It was his own soul rejecting the path he'd followed. Failure alone wasn't terrifying. The terror lay in fully accepting that failure. Something inside him seemed to shatter, and with it the sword in his hand. A figure suddenly stepped into his path, blotting out the sun and dimming the world by several shades. Atomic Samurai raised his head slowly and found a domineering, majestic face almost within reach. Don't be discouraged, Atomic Samurai. Do you know what you're missing? The man asked. It's precisely that which has kept your strength from rapidly advancing, the reason you're stuck at your sword Tao bottleneck. King's rhetorical question pricked at Atomic Samurai's curiosity. How did he know he was stalled? Atomic Samurai's surprise showed plainly. King couldn't help but smile inwardly. Of course it's plot divine power, he thought, amusement flickering across his face. What should I say to make an impression? Under Atomic Samurai's burning stare, King let his reply out slowly. It's the sword Tao heart that charges forward without hesitation. You lack that. That's the true reason you cannot break through the water surface realm. A sword Tao heart that charges forward without hesitation. Atomic Samurai froze, then his eyes brightened. Perhaps that was it. Perhaps it was his lack of an irrepressible determination, the willingness to swing his blade no matter the cost, that had kept him from breaking through. He recalled the instant he was cut down by the sun sperm, its whole body wreathed in flames. The proud, resolute heart he had carried then had seemed to shatter. From that moment, his sword Tao heart had been fragile. In each atomic slash, he'd unleashed a sliver of cowardice. His mind had been scattered, and without the stillness of a mirrored water surface, he could not advance. A breeze moved through the clearing. Atomic Samurai stood motionless, as if struck by enlightenment. King didn't hurry. He idly scrolled his phone with his divine thought, waiting for the epiphany to arrive. You can't deny it. This guy is a genius, King thought. I say a word or two, and he starts to understand the Tao by himself. Inside his mind space, Atomic Samurai stood on the surface of a lake. His breathing was steady, his heart was perfectly calm. The sword, remade in his mind, was firm in his grip. King's words looped through his thoughts. A sword Tao heart that charges forward without hesitation. No matter the difficulty, even if I am defeated, even if my sword breaks in my hand, even if I stand in the face of death, even if despair seems insurmountable, I must keep a sword Dao heart that charges forward without hesitation. Only by always advancing will I grow stronger and pursue the highest reaches of the sword Dao. At first, the lake at his feet rippled, concentric circles spreading as if stirred by a restless wind. As Atomic Samurai's eyes opened, the ripples slowed and calmed until the entire surface lay as smooth as a mirror, reflecting him perfectly. In that stillness, he found his sword Dao. He shattered the bottleneck that had tormented him, and the gate to the fabled water surface realm swung open. "Thank you for your guidance, Mr. King," Atomic Samurai said, sincere gratitude bright in his voice. King waved dismissively, expression unchanged. "No problem, Atomic Samurai. This is the fruit of your own epiphany and your accumulated experience. I only offered a small pointer." Atomic Samurai felt warmth flow through him at King's modesty. "You're jesting, Mr. King. If not for your incisive guidance, how could I have achieved epiphany so quickly?" Every word was earnest. His reverence for King had never been higher. He hurried off, eager to return home and continue his enlightenment. King scratched his head, watching him go with bemusement. Why did this feel like an NPC accepting a quest? I give a few pointers and the player has an epiphany, then leaves the reward behind and runs off. Odd. King closed his eyes and let his consciousness sink inward, listening to the cold system notification chime that sounded in his mind like a faint, celestial melody. Ding, congratulations for completing Option 1. Option 1, agree to Atomic Samurai's request and engage in a sparring match with him, like an adult playing with a child, to make him realize the flaws in his sword Dao. The only requirement is to avoid accidentally killing Atomic Samurai. Option 1 reward System Item X. Ding, reward has been issued. Congratulations 13 for obtaining Time Field X1. Chapter 189. What's going on here? King raised an eyebrow as he looked at the newly acquired item in his inventory. Time Stop Field? He clicked the details and a faint blue data panel sprang up in front of him. Time Stop Field, a special item that can pause time. Upon activation, it halts time within a 100-kilometer radius. Energy from the Time Stop Field is consumed while time is stopped. The field can be deactivated at any time. The name felt oddly familiar. An image of a vampire in a yellow bodysuit and green vest flickered across King's mind. Isn't this just Time Stop? With a thought, he pulled the Time Stop Field out of his inventory, and it materialized in his hand. The device looked like a remote. King rubbed his chin and decided to test it. He stepped into a crowded plaza. Young couples leaned into each other, faces soft with affection. Groups of students laughed, their joy spilling out. Anxious office workers clutched briefcases, striding along and glancing at their wristwatches. King watched these everyday scenes, then pressed the large stop button on the remote. Silence fell like a curtain. A purple halo radiated from him, spreading instantly over a 100-kilometer radius. Everything froze. The lovers' gazes hung in midair, locked but incapable of conveying anything. An office worker was suspended with one foot raised, anxiety etched across his frozen face. The students' smiles were locked in place, hands fixed as if turned to stone. Within the time-stop domain, only King remained unfrozen. He extended his divine thought and swept the area. Everyone within had been frozen by stopped time. Curious, King experimented. He found he could move their bodies however he liked. The scenarios from so many time-stop movies were suddenly possible. Casting aside the less wholesome ideas, King had another question. While time was stopped, were these people conscious? He pressed start. A purple ripple rolled outward, and everyone resumed their actions as if nothing had happened. The couple's fingers were still intertwined, love unchanged. The office worker kept muttering, "Damn, boss. I'm going to be late again, damn it." The students continued on, laughter and chatter rising back into the air. From their behavior, it was clear. The time-stop field also froze consciousness. People within the field didn't retain thoughts while time was stopped. For now, King couldn't think of any spectacular use for the device beyond support or clearing a path. He didn't know yet whether it could trap someone like the bald Demon King. Acting on the idea, he blinked into existence in front of a small villa, the house the Hero Association had given Saitama. A few more luxurious villas sat nearby, with the occasional snide laugh of old money drifting through the area. All right, let's see whether stopping time works on a cheat like him. King muttered, and pressed the button. Inside, a shiny bald head lay on the floor, bored, a freshly opened bag of tomato-flavored potato chips in hand. Saitama popped a chip in his mouth now and then, eyes glued to the TV. Don't you know yet? A Shinigami's battle is a battle of spiritual pressure. A Shinigami's power is essentially the power of spiritual pressure, the villain on TV declared. You, who possess a mixture of multiple powers, have long been in my sights. You? What are you talking about? Saitama watched the dialogue and complained. How is this protagonist's hearing worse than mine? Every time the villain talks, he acts like he can't hear. Does he even have ears? In the kitchen, Sun Sperm had extinguished the flames that swirled across his body and was carefully washing dishes, wearing an apron with a pink heart. He peeked at Saitama, then almost crushed the bowl in his hand. I'm a god-level monster of divine rank, a being who could level the earth. How did I end up doing housework for a human every day? He wanted to cry. Since being recruited as the bald demon king's pet, his life had been nothing but housework, grocery runs, and cooking. No freedom at all. This was pure slavery. Just as Sun Sperm stewed in grief and indignation, an aura as terrifying as an abyss slammed into his perception. It was overbearing, like a 10,000-foot divine mountain crushing his soul. King, why is he here all of a sudden? Oh, right, he and this bald guy are friends. Maybe if I go out and kowtow to King, he'll be in a good mood and let me go. Sun Sperm's throat moved as he swallowed nothing. His thoughts raced. Then a massive sense of crisis washed over him, every cell screaming danger. Before he could react, purple ripples spread through the void realm, and the surrounding 100 kilometers dropped into absolute silence. Unlike ordinary people, Sun Sperm, a god-level monster, still had thoughts even after entering the time-stop domain. His body wouldn't move, not even his eyes, but his mind was wide awake, trapped in a state of shock. What on earth is going on? 189, Chapter 190 is really weird. Sun Sperm felt as if his entire body had frozen solid. He couldn't move at all, not even roll his eyes. What on earth was happening? Could this be some special technique of King's? Why did it feel like time itself had stopped? As a god-level monster, Sun Sperm's existence was already far beyond that of ordinary earthly life. He could sense time and space. Although he still couldn't use them perfectly, he had at least brushed the threshold. Because of that, he could clearly tell that time in this area had stopped. If time were a massive assembly of constantly turning gears, the gears here had jammed and would not turn anymore. Using his advanced tier awareness and concentrating all the energy in his body into his mind, Sun Sperm barely kept his thoughts coherent. Even so, his thinking crawled along, as if time itself had been stretched. Just then, a dissatisfied shout cut through the frozen air. What the heck? Why did the internet suddenly get so bad? It lagged right at the crucial moment. Inside the time-stop field, Saitama was completely unaffected. He smacked the LCD TV in irritation. The frozen image on the screen, the exact moment the villain and the newly evolved protagonist were about to start their final battle, had stopped moving. Are you kidding me? A vein ticked on Saitama's forehead. Being cut off right at the climax made him furious. He had been completely absorbed, and then it just lagged out. Sun Sperm felt a shock that nearly split his spirit. Saitama could ignore the time stop? Was this guy's level really that far above his own? Then he thought back. When Saitama had beaten him, he had only thrown 2 casual punches and almost destroyed him. In that light, it made sense. Outside Saitama's door, King had been watching everything inside through his divine thought. He couldn't help but nod. This time-stop field wasn't actually that formidable. At best, it had niche uses or could mop up weaker enemies. It probably wouldn't work well against high-dimensional beings like gods. Still, it was a usable tool. While Saitama was bashing the TV, his front door suddenly opened. King walked in and immediately saw Saitama slapping the screen. "Yo, Saitama, looks like you're having trouble. Need me to handle it?" he asked. Saitama, thundercloud of agitation, let out a relieved breath when he saw King. "King, help me check. My TV's frozen. Is the internet lagging?" King pretended to look around for a moment, then nodded with a certain air. "That's easy. Leave it to me." He reached into his back pocket and lightly tapped a remote. The time-stop field withdrew, and the TV resumed playing. Saitama thanked him and plopped down in front of the screen, ready to seriously watch the final showdown. Freed at last, Sunsperm's entire body relaxed. Cold sweat poured off him, and his whole frame trembled. In the next instant, the plate he was holding slid from his fingers because of his uncontrolled movements. It crashed to the floor and shattered into ceramic fragments. Sunsperm. Oh no, losing his composure in front of two top-tier figures was disastrous. He could be torn apart at any moment. Sure enough, at the crisp sound of breaking porcelain, Saitama stuck his head over with a bewildered look. Seeing the shards on the floor, his expression soured. "Why are you so clumsy? Stop washing the dishes. Leave the rest. I'll wash them later. Go do something else." "Thank you for your mercy, Lord Saitama." Sunsperm almost cried at Saitama's forgiveness. He had been certain he'd be flattened the instant the plate broke. "Yes, Lord Saitama. Please allow me to clean up the shards first so they don't dirty your floor," Sunsperm said, slipping back into overly formal politeness. Saitama sighed helplessly. "I've told you 100 times, don't talk so formally, okay? It's really weird." Chapter 191. After all, the water stream rock-smashing fist is nearly lost to history. Since City Zed was destroyed that day, Bang's water stream rock-smashing fist dojo couldn't escape either. The whole mountaintop had been leveled. To placate this giant of the martial arts world, the Hero Association rebuilt the dojo on a similar peak in the suburbs outside the city. According to a later report from Metal Knight, he had dispatched 30 combat units to support the great battle, but they were all wiped out by a black stream of light before they even reached the battlefield. The S-Class heroes reacted to his claim in different ways, but the Hero Association accepted it. Metal Knight was one of their few technical experts, and they had no choice but to take his word seriously. On the new mountaintop, the rebuilt dojo looked a little desolate with few people around. An elderly man with bandages wrapped around him lay back in a grand armchair in the small courtyard, his cloudy eyes fixed on the blue sky. Images of that great battle kept replaying in Bang's mind. When the being called God descended, its presence had been overwhelmingly alien and domineering. Yet when Bang saw it, he felt an odd heartbeat of recognition, as if he'd seen someone familiar. Thinking of the figure's build made Bang fall silent. His expression grew heavier. Why did that thing resemble Garou so much, yet clearly it was the god that tried to destroy the world? The feeling from that day wouldn't leave him. After the battle, Bang had asked everywhere for any news of Garou. A person like him, a brilliant eldest disciple, should have left traces. But Garou had vanished. Recently, Bang felt more and more uneasy. Garou seemed to have disappeared without a trace. Maybe he went to some distant city, Bang tried to tell himself, but he knew that hope was wishful thinking. Bang remembered that he had long suspected problems in Garou's heart nature. He'd believed that careful teaching could put the boy back on the right path. He never expected Garou to turn on the dojo, hurt many disciples, and leave to pursue his own ideals. After that incident, disciples feared reprisal and left one after another, and newcomers stopped coming. The dojo dwindled, leaving only Karanko, a disciple without any talent. Memories of the past filled the air. Bang sighed deeply and hunched a bit in his chair. Then footsteps sounded on the heaven-reaching staircase not far away. The newcomer's steps were steady, each footfall measured, giving off a calm, enduring aura. Not arrogant, not humble. Bang opened his eyes and turned his gaze toward the stairs. Who would come here, at that level of skill? Could it be a challenger? In the martial world, Bang was a legend. Many sought his defeat to make a name for themselves. I might as well stretch my bones a bit. These bandages have been making my shoulders stiff, Bang muttered, getting to his feet and twisting until his joints popped. Before he could prepare to greet whoever it was, a familiar voice drifted down the staircase. Oi, 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 old man. Still full of energy. Why is it that every time I come back, you look like you want to fight? That voice. Bang's eyes widened. Before the man even stepped into view, Bang saw that distinctive two-toned hair. Garou strode down the staircase and into the courtyard, taking in the scene with a casual glance. Same as when I left, old man, Garou said. Looks like your taste hasn't changed. Bang raised an eyebrow, forcing down his shock and letting a teasing edge into his voice. Oh, Isn't this the senior who shouted about his ambitions, then beat up my disciples and ran off? What brings you back? Bang's tone was intentionally provocative. He wanted to test Garu's reaction, and more than that, he wanted to know why the boy had returned. If it were the Garu of old, arrogant and unruly, he would have snapped back angrily. This Garu did not. He didn't flare any hostile energy or adopt a fighting pose. Instead, a smile that had been absent for a long time slowly touched the corners of his mouth. "What did I come back for?" Garu said, pausing as if collecting his thoughts. He took a deep breath and clenched his fists before continuing, quieter now. "Old man, no, Master Bang, will you take me back? I want to come home and keep learning the water stream rock-smashing fist. After all, the style is dying out." Chapter 192. Then what the hell am I supposed to be, the number 1 S-class? Garu's words struck Bang like an arrow. The old master bowed his head, and when he looked up again, the wrinkles around his eyes were damp with something like red. "What made you want to come back all of a sudden? Don't you still want to keep chasing your 4? Garu scratched his head awkwardly and thumbed himself. "No, that's not it. Of course I'll keep going after the 4, but I'm changing my approach." He winced, then suddenly dropped to a very low bow. His voice cracked. "I'm sorry, old man. I shouldn't have done what I did back then. I failed you. Please give me another chance. This time, I'll take the right path to reach my ideal." Bang stared for a long moment. Then his hand trembled as he reached up, placed it on Garu's head, and ruffled the coarse, spiky white hair. "It's good to have you back. Really good to have you back." They held each other's gaze, and in that look, the rift that had broken master and disciple was mended. Bang rubbed his white beard, joy warming his voice. "Now tell your master everything. What happened while you were away from the dojo?" Garu nodded and spilled out the whole story. Bang listened in silence as Garu detailed his reckless challenge to the strongest man on earth, King, only to be knocked out by 2 slaps and thrown into prison. Bang couldn't help but smile at the thought of the kid ending up in jail. But when Garu explained that while imprisoned, his body had been taken over by that mastermind called God, Bang's face tensed. "My instinct was right. I just didn't realize it was possession back then. You must have gone through a lot." Garu's stream of words halted at that. He pursed his lips. "Ah, it wasn't much. That great one is strong, but what are a few hardships to someone like me? Anyway, I'm not finished. The best part comes next." Bang kept listening. When Garu told how King had charged into the sun, fought God, and pulled him, dying, out of the sun, Bang finally lost his composure. Was the battle really that fierce? Bang's last memory of that war was King descending like some heavenly being, taking God away and blasting the sun's remnants with a single punch. He hadn't known the fight had extended so far, even up into the starry sky. "So how do you intend to pursue that 4 now? King's powerful." Garu puffed out his chest proudly. "I already talked with the strongest man on earth. He gave me advice on how to move forward. To be a 4, you don't need to beat every hero, become the most wicked being, or the ultimate representative of monsters. There's actually an easier way. I want to become a hero, to become the 2. If I can surpass that mysterious blast and sit at the top of the S-class, then switch my identity to monster, I can still become the 4. Bang nodded slowly as King's reasoning clicked into place. They want Garu to become a professional hero, to truly understand the essence of being a hero, and so be turned toward the right path. It was unexpectedly gentle. But wait, become 2 and surpass Blast? Wasn't Blast already the number 2? A puzzled look crossed Bang's face. This kid's information must be out of date. Garu had been too busy the last few days, hunting for the new water stream rock-smashing fist dojo, worrying about food and lodging, and paying no attention to hero-ranking news. He still believed Blast held the top position. Bang sighed and decided it was time to tell him the truth. "Garu, the current 2-2 is no longer Blast." Garu's words caught. His eyes widened. "What? It's not Blast? Then who is the 2 now?" A bad feeling rose in his chest as Bang said the name. Garu's face drained. "The current 2 is the strongest man on earth, King. He'd shown his full strength in that war, and with Blast himself stepping aside, King took the position." Garu fell silent. "Then what the hell am I even trying to be 2 for?" Chapter 193. Damn it! Bang looked at Garu's sullen face and couldn't help the soft smile that deepened the wrinkles at his eyes. It's all right. Even if the current S-Class Rank 1 is the strongest man on Earth, King, that doesn't mean anything, Guru. You have to learn to believe in yourself. Guru, this isn't about believing in myself anymore, he thought. After seeing the Battle of the Sun with his own eyes, Garu had already put King on a pedestal like a god, a terrifying existence utterly impossible to defeat. And now Bang was telling him that if he wanted to reach the goal in his heart, the first step was to beat King? Seeing Garu's drooped expression, Bang reached up to stroke his beard again and smiled. But don't worry too much. King won't hold the S-Class Rank 1 spot forever. Garu looked up, puzzled. Oh, how so? Bang's mind drifted to that tall, blonde figure, and a flicker of admiration for the powerful new generation crossed his face as he spoke slowly. You have to understand. Someone like King, who stands above ordinary humanity, can't be tied down by a single hero association. If what you said before is true, that King already has the strength to launch his physical body into outer space, then he's destined to rise onto a stage beyond the stars, not stay confined to Earth. As a martial arts grandmaster, Bang saw things plainly. When a person's strength far exceeds their surroundings, their path is upward, not staying put. Garu's eyes brightened as Bang's meaning sank in. Old man, you mean I just have to become an S-Class hero first and then wait for King to leave the association? Then I can become S-Class Rank 1? Bang nodded. This kid's understanding was as sharp as ever. Exactly. Even if you can't match him now, keep training under me. One day, when King no longer stays in the hero association, you'll naturally be Rank 1. 9 parts truth and 1 part lie, Bang thought with a small smile. The only thing he didn't know was when or if King would step away from being a hero. What if the man liked it here and stayed for decades or a century? Still, it gave Garu something to chase, something to keep him moving forward. Youth was a powerful thing. Bang glanced down at his old, crooked hands and shook his head. He was old. This era belonged to the young. Old bones like his just needed to support them from behind. 2 weeks passed slowly. The routines of the S-Class heroes shifted in small and large ways. Metal Bat was still an obsessive brother, but after 2 recent near-death experiences, he doted on his sister more than ever. If someone could die and never see what they loved again, he wasn't about to let that happen. Still, if humanity faced an extinction-level threat, he would, despite any reluctance, throw himself into the fight because his sister was part of humanity. Watchdog Man was back in City Q, resuming his role as the city's guardian. He spent his days stretched out on the statue in the central plaza, lazily soaking up the sun. Pig God was still eating and drinking, but a sense of urgency had crept into him. Having felt powerless during the disaster, he wanted to add more heft, stack more fat, so his ultimate move would be even stronger. Strong enough to protect people. Metal Knight was called in for a meeting with the Hero Association executives after the City Z incident. The executives, cowards toward the strong and bullies toward the weak, didn't scold him. They simply asked him to contribute more in the future. Tornado remained S-Class Rank 2 and kept herself in the public eye, proactively dealing with monsters and disasters every day. Hailed as the Queen of Espers and blessed with incredible psychic abilities, she still felt worn and irritable. But whenever she pictured that scarred blonde pressing down on her, a fresh surge of motivation flared. Since his epiphany, Atomic Samurai was different yet familiar. He had once been proud, only exchanging swords with the strong and drawing his blade like an arrogant wanderer at any slight. Now he was like a calm pool. No matter the external disturbance, his heart no longer rippled. He hadn't lost emotion. If anything, he'd become more stable, composed, and reliable. Drive Knight had repaired his mechanical body and added new components, boosting his firepower. Tank Top Master, reduced to a 1-meter-tall muscle-bound dwarf after the City Z disaster, was desperate to regain authority over his army. He shut himself away, ingesting huge amounts of protein and training relentlessly. After nearly 3 weeks, he finally added 10 centimeters, crawling from 1 meter to 1 meter 10. Still short, but an improvement he intended to build on. Superalloy Darkshine's muscles gleamed even brighter. Anyone watching closely could see he had changed from the inside out. Once pride masked a streak of insecurity and fear, now he radiated nothing but swaggering confidence and absolute trust in his own body. After watching King and Saitama in combat, an idea reawakened in Zombie Man's mind. He went straight to Dr. Kinos, who sold takoyaki on the side, and after explaining his thoughts about his regeneration factor, convinced the doctor to temporarily close up shop and help him attempt a breakthrough in his own regenerative abilities. When sexy prisoner's wounds healed, he rushed back to the prison, brimming with joy to reunite with his harem, especially the dark-haired darling he favored most. That joy died when he was told, tremblingly, that the prison's second-in-command, Garu, and his most beloved concubine, Sonic, had both escaped. Sexy prisoner's heart fell as if it had been cut out. Bang had suspended nearly all hero activities. He rarely appeared in public, preferring to stay at the Waterstream rock-smashing fist dojo and carefully train his eldest disciple, the one he'd finally brought back, Garu. Karanko, just returned from the shelter, nearly fainted when she saw Garu. Child Emperor remained at odds with Metal Knight, especially after the latter's lackluster behavior in the Great Battle, which made Child Emperor see him as a traitor to humanity. Still, the battle had given Child Emperor new inspiration. He came away with ideas that pushed his mechanical designs and equipment to a higher level. Flashy Flash discovered that his speed wasn't the absolute peak of the world after all. Many people could rival or surpass him. Driven, he dug out an old ninja training manual and started practicing obsessively. Whether it was the flame-covered monster, One Punch Man, or King, he swore he would surpass them all. As for Blast, after his speech, he vanished from everyone's sight entirely. If things went as expected, he had regrouped with the God Opposition Squad. Meanwhile, in a certain bald-headed man's home. Damn it! Chapter 194. What a joke. The two peak powerhouses of the era were slouched in front of a game console, each holding a controller. King sat completely relaxed, hands barely moving as he used divine thought to manipulate the controller for him. Saitama, on the other hand, had a livid expression and was frantically scrubbing at his buttons, trying to pull off one brilliant move after another. No matter what Saitama did, King's dominance was absolute. Every hit Saitama attempted was effortlessly shut down. King's health bar hadn't even budged. Watching his character fall yet again while King remained unscathed, Saitama finally snapped. Damn it! Are you using a health lock? Why hasn't your health bar changed at all? King shrugged, utterly indifferent. Don't be a sore loser, Saitama. I'm playing fair. You're just terrible. You haven't even touched the hem of my clothes. Saitama was speechless. He felt completely powerless, beaten mercilessly by King in a video game and not even landing a single hit. Anger and humiliation surged through him. He grabbed the controller again, eyes blazing. Again! I don't believe this! Veins stood out on Saitama's smooth, bald head. His face flushed beet red, as if he were about to overheat. After 358 consecutive rounds without landing even a basic attack, he finally slumped to the ground, pale and defeated. I give up. Nearby, Sunsperm watched with wide eyes. Games. Could they really destroy someone mentally like this? Even that terrifying bald hero had collapsed in agony. Secretly, he resolved to practice. One day he would learn to beat the bald one at games and use that as his bargaining chip to win back his freedom. Saitama. It's been a while. Time to move. King casually patted Saitama's shoulder, as if they were discussing breakfast plans. The words seemed to recharge Saitama. In an instant, he changed. White cape billowing, a mustard-yellow jumpsuit clinging to his muscular frame. Say no more. Let's go. I'm fired up. I just needed somewhere to pour it out. Not long ago, King had told Saitama he intended to go with him into the high-dimensional world to strike back at God, and Saitama had readily agreed. Fighting top-tier opponents and feeling the thrill of battle, this was what Saitama had wanted ever since he'd become invincible. Besides, the so-called God had tried to invade Earth. That alone was enough to get Saitama's hackles up. He was itching to thrash whoever was responsible. Sunsperm, who had been eavesdropping, felt a cold premonition. They're going to beat up God? The unease in his gut tightened until it practically screamed danger. Sure enough, King turned and pointed at him slowly. Why don't we bring this guy along too? Otherwise it'll be boring. Are you kidding me? Chapter 195. Thank you for your kind words. Sunsperm almost peed himself. He had betrayed the god once, and he still carried the god's power. If they took him into the high-dimensional world to fight, wouldn't the god simply drain that power on the spot and leave him a fool? That, Lord Saitama, Lord King, you don't need a weak creature like me to go, right? I'll handle the logistics at home. When Saitama asked, King's eyes slid to Sunsperm, a thought flickering across his face. This guy couldn't be left on Earth. Sunsperm was incredibly lucky. He still hoarded the god's power. Because the god's true body had been driven into the high-dimensional world and could no longer invade Sunsperm's mind, a certain bald head could even drop into Sunsperm's soul world. That created a bizarre situation. Although the god could theoretically reclaim the power from Sunsperm, he had never managed to do so. But if Sunsperm went into the high-dimensional world, he would likely be drained dry the moment he crossed over, his power becoming nourishment for the god. Sunsperm was a lowly god-level monster, easy to smack to death, but even a mosquito's leg is meat. If the god absorbed Sunsperm's power, the enemy would only grow stronger. King wouldn't risk aiding the enemy. Yet leaving Sunsperm on Earth was also dangerous. Weak was only relative. On Earth, Sunsperm was like a force from a higher dimension. Even Tatsumaki wouldn't be able to take a full punch from him. King and Saitama were going into the high-dimensional world, and they didn't know how long they would be gone. What if Sunsperm went on a killing spree while they were away? There might be no one who could stop him. The only sensible solution was to keep Sunsperm off Earth during the operation, while also preventing him from entering the high-dimensional world. King already had a plan. A middle-aged man in white battle armor strode into the house and greeted the dazed Saitama. "Hello, Saitama. How've you been?" "Ah, I'm fine." Saitama rubbed his head and answered with a blank expression. Blast, however, wasted no time. He glanced warily at the trembling Sunsperm and then at King. "What is it, King? Is this about him?" Blast's look made Sunsperm sit up like he'd been jolted. A chill crawled through him. Even the flames flickering over his body didn't warm him. "This is bad. Is he here to settle a score? My life is over. If only I hadn't attacked him back then." Sunsperm panicked like a cornered animal. He had humiliated Blast terribly on that dying planet, left him injured as the planet fell apart. Now Blast was on good terms with King and impossibly powerful people. If he complained, he'd be killed for sure. Sunsperm knew his place. Though he'd sided with humanity, the power in him was still the gods. If King and Saitama decided to eliminate unstable factors, he'd be the first to go. Panic peaked and began to curdle into anger. Even a cornered rabbit bites. If he was going to be purged, he would fight with everything he had. He began to gather his power quietly, planning to bolt at the first sign of hostility. King sensed the flow instantly. He turned, his composed, imposing face fixed on Sunsperm. Why is he gathering power? Under King's steady gaze, Sunsperm felt his chi drain away, his courage shriveled. Any thought of resistance evaporated. If he submitted, there might be a sliver of a chance to live. If he resisted, he'd be beaten to death on the spot. Forget it, he accepted it. Even if they beat him to death, he would submit. King and Saitama had no idea of the storm inside Sunsperm's head. They were still discussing plans with Blast. Finally, the three reached an agreement on roles. Saitama and King would go into the high-dimensional world through the spatial tunnel. Blast would open, then use King's special item to locate the god and perform a Deus Ex Machina arrival. Blast would provide peripheral support with the C0, and he would deposit the unstable variable Sunsperm several light years away to be picked up later. "Step aside. I'll open the spatial tunnel," Blast said. He rolled his shoulders and inhaled deeply. The veteran's eyes behind his goggles were grave and focused. After years of fighting the god, maybe today everything would finally end. King and Saitama's combined strength exceeded even Blast's imagination. If they worked together, they might truly slay the god in the high-dimensional world. He would pay whatever price it took. Blast could open spatial tunnels within their world with ease. The lower dimensional spaces were linked. It was only a matter of punching a hole between two places. What he had to do now was different. Opening a tunnel from a 3 to a Ach 2 was like forcibly breaking the barrier between two realms. It would be an enormous drain on Blast. After this, he might be drained for a week or two. but if it meant making the gods suffer, it was worth it. Blast shouted, and a surging six burst from his body. Boundless spatial energy converged before him, lashing at the space ahead. For a tense 10 seconds, the energy battered the air until Blast's face went pale and a silvery white spatial tunnel erupted, suffused with blue light. A subtle, otherworldly presence brushed everyone's senses. Blast's voice trembled, but his finger pointed unwaveringly at the blue rift. "It's open. This leads to the high-dimensional world. Go, end this." Saitama and King nodded in unison and stepped toward the tunnel without looking back. Just as they were about to be swallowed by blue light, Blast called after them, stopping them for a moment. "Wait, one more thing." They turned. Blast was smiling brilliantly and gave a thumbs up. "I wish you great success in battle." "That's a nice blessing," Saitama said, pumping his fist in a similar smile. King nodded, a faint curve forming at the corner of his mouth. He waved one hand in the air as he turned back toward the tunnel. "May your words come true." With that, their figures were engulfed by the blue light and vanished. Chapter 196. We've come to accompany you, God. In the high-dimensional world, God sat in a pale void, drawing in the scattered energies around him to replenish himself. His form was as those in the lower realm had seen it, a humanoid figure woven from countless twisted lines. It was the arrogance of a god. He refused even there to adopt a false guise, flaunting his contempt for lesser beings. But recent events had stripped him of the right to look down on the lower realms so easily. Sensing the weakness deep in his soul, he cursed silently. Ever since he had been struck down in the lower realm, his true body had suffered catastrophic backlash. Nearly 40% of his origin had been destroyed, and after an agonizing period of recovery, he had restored only 20%. He had forced the fragile currents of high-dimensional time to flow faster to hurry his healing. While only 3 weeks had passed in King's world, nearly 1,000 years had slipped by here, and even so his recovery had been painfully slow. There was nothing he could do but wait. With his origin restored to this extent, he believed he could handle those pests who had set their sights on him. God clenched his fists. Chaotic colors erupted around him, staining the pale void as he prepared for war. Even a god was not unrivaled in the vast high-dimensional world. Above the myriad heavens and realms, there were beings stronger than him, and many whose strength equaled his. As long as one of them showed the faintest sign of exhaustion, the others would swarm in to seize power. The world's energy was too sparse and had long since been parceled out among the powerful. To grow stronger, one either had to plunder a lower world he was assigned to or devour other high-dimensional existences. "Once I've fully recovered, I will return to the lower realm and settle the score with those two," he vowed. King and that bald man who transcended the rules, he sneered at the thought. This was his territory. Even if 2 ants from below somehow made it up here, what then? He could slaughter them and devour their power. If he could take everything from those two, King and Saitama, he would rise again, climb to an even higher peak among the myriad heavens and realms. He was lost in that fantasy when a thunderous roar rolled across the void, a sound that seemed to travel 10,000 miles in an instant. A violent shockwave of golden energy tore outward, and God's whole body trembled. He knew that presence. The same hated, familiar power and dread blossomed inside him. Impossible. How could he have come up here? Behind the golden shockwave surged another tide, a crimson wave that shot into the sky and dyed the pale void scarlet. Thump, thump, thump. The sound of beats like some colossal heart pulsed through the space, muffled yet overwhelmingly powerful. The sound, it could only be the Emperor engine. Energy flooded God in response. He braced for battle as the chaotic colors in his aura clashed with the rising crimson, turning the heavens a bruised purple and blood red. How had this man become even stronger? The pressure was unbearable. A spatial tunnel tore open, and to the steady, thunderous roar of the Emperor engine, King and Saitama stepped out into the blue light. "It's been a long time," one of them said. "I heard you were thinking of us, so we've come to keep you company, God." Chapter 197. The Battle of the River of Time. The moment he heard King's voice, the god felt a panic unlike any he had ever known. He had been gravely wounded before, surrounded by packs of high-dimensional beasts. He had seen his 1,000-year plan unravel, Still, he had never felt fear. Anger, yes, rage that lesser beings had interrupted his designs. But never this, a white-hot, soul-deep terror. How could this be? They are mere lower beings. How have they invaded the high-dimensional world? No, this must be illusion. Some high-dimensional genjutsu expert must be targeting me. He would have preferred that answer. To accept that these two monsters, King and Saitama, had actually come into the high-dimensional world was unthinkable. Yet the terror carved into his origin would not be denied. His whole body trembled. Such power. The vital energy he felt was far beyond what he had sensed in their final battle. He was stunned. He knew King's adaptive ability and how terrifying his growth could be, but who in the lower worlds could match the King of then, or help him rise to this extent? A flash of a shining bald head pierced his thoughts. So it was him. At that realization, the god lost whatever composure he had left. King didn't bother with words beyond a curt nod. An iron fist condensed with brutal vital energy and smashed toward the god. In an instant, the god's entire origin trembled as if struck by something unbelievable. Damn it, I can't dodge this. His aura locked onto, he realized he could not evade the blow. In desperation, he poured every scrap of power into his own fist, transforming his origin into a riot of chaotic colors and launching an attack. Their fists met in the crimson and chaos void. The collision sent a shockwave rippling for hundreds of thousands of miles. Saitama casually raised a hand to brush the shockwave aside and smooth back his non-existent hair. Almost messed up my hair, though I guess I don't have a hairstyle anyway. He felt King's aura was enough to crush the god opposite them, so he held back. He had no need to strike yet. The power stalemated for a heartbeat, then the crimson vital energy overran the chaotic hues with oppressive force and drove forward without mercy. The god barely had time to react. The arm he had used to strike shattered the moment the crimson energy struck. More than half his body was blasted away, 10% of his origin gone in a single impact. The realization hit him like a cold blade. No, I cannot fight him head-on. The high-dimensional being who had always prized himself for superiority turned and fled without hesitation. His form dissolved into a stream of light, condensed chaotic colors, and he dove into the long river of time, fleeing toward a point in the past. In the high-dimensional world, there were no ordinary spatial limits. What could be said to exist were threads, countless strands that wove and braided together to form the long river of time. It was both the end of all things and the foundation of their operation. Sensing the god's aura vanish, King and Saitama exchanged a look and leapt into the river without hesitation. Time flowed and shifted ceaselessly, and the threads of reality were all reflected within it. High above the river, where mortal senses could not follow, three figures tore along the current. Each collision between them sent the long river into prolonged, unceasing turmoil. Roar! A thunderous bellow echoed through a distant, primitive world. A small dinosaur panicked and ran, but was bitten clean through by a larger beast's bloody maw. The screech ended as the predator chewed and swallowed, crimson still dripping from its mouth. It lifted its head to roar, and then its eyes caught something streaking across the sky. Three meteor-like lights plunged through the heavens. A purple radiance spilled over the land, and chaotic colors poured out, engulfing everything. Most life had no time to react. The chaotic hues consumed them and converted them into the purest life energy. In an instant, a once vibrant world became a silent deathland. Hidden among the currents, the god had chosen this world to recover the origin he had burned in the initial clash. He devoured its life force to rebuild himself. Seeing nearly all the life extinguished, he snorted. Converting such a small amount of origin power, what pathetic trash. From above, Saitama's expression grew cold as he watched the dead world. His fist, clad in a red glove, tightened. His gaze sharpened until it was like a blade. Let's finish him. I can't stand it. He's slaughtering life even now. They did not hesitate. Saitama and King accelerated again, closing in on the god at a speed visible to the naked eye. The god tried to slip back into the river and continue his escape, but the two pursuers were burning with fury. They would not give him room to run. As he neared the exit of the world, alarm bells screamed through the god's mind. Two fists, charged with terrifying pressure, rocketed toward him in the instant before he could escape. 197, Chapter 198, A True Man's One-on-One Challenge Scroll. Seeing that God was about to be pummeled by the two fists, he sneered coldly, contempt boiling in his chest. As expected, just two lower beings. They didn't even notice such a trick. Two pieces of trash who can only swing their strength around. He spread his hands and opened his arms, letting the fists strike his form while laughing maniacally. When did you get the idea I was still here? What stood there was only an image of God. The real God had already slipped away, using the thick temporal current of the river of time to hide in another timeline. But King only smiled wider at God's words, laughter ringing louder than God's had. Oh, and when did you assume you were the original body? A golden radiance burst from King. He forced a strand of God's presence out of the river of time and yanked the original God back. It happened so fast that even God's true self couldn't react. By the time he felt the shadow of death, his own origin, following him, it was already too late. Boom, boom, boom. Three terrifying forces slammed together at once, whipping up a massive storm of energy that, astonishingly, did not spread outward. Within the 10-kilometer diameter golden sphere created by the scroll, energies capable of crushing suns tore against one another and dissipated wildly. God was left seeing stars under the combined punches of Saitama and King. His origin was being torn away at a desperate pace, his body falling apart. Damn it. 30% of his origin had been shattered by that single combined blow. Hope sank to the bottom of his being and was replaced by absolute despair. What are these two monsters? How much time has passed in that lower world? Why are they this strong? In God's perception, Saitama and King's power was more than 10,000 times greater than in their last fight just weeks ago. I have to escape quickly. If I clash with them a few more times, my origin will be exhausted and I'll die. In an instant, God became a streak of light and bolted for the edge of the golden sphere, burning his origin without hesitation. Chaotic colors, violent and overwhelming, surged like a storm against the barrier. But as he watched, God froze. Why? Why can't I break through? He slammed into it again and was flung back by an even more terrifying counterforce. A steady, mocking voice echoed in his ear. It's useless. This is my dueling arena. No one leaves unless one of us is beaten to death. Dueling arena? God turned his head to see King and Saitama standing there like predators. If he still had eyes to shed tears with, he would have. What kind of duel is this? Me against both of you. He tried to reach the river of time and found the connection severed. Everything was cut off. Neither King nor Saitama wasted another second. After confirming God could not escape, they advanced and raised their fists. Overwhelmed, God fell to his knees in the void, his voice obsequious. Can we come to an agreement? At a time like this, you must be joking. What followed was merciless. Saitama and King pummeled God back and forth like a ball in a game. King's golden fist crashed into God's face and sent him tumbling. Saitama, already waiting, watched God fly toward him. His gaze hardened and his arms swelled with muscle. Killer move, serious series, super serious punch. Under their relentless assault, even God could not hold on. His form flickered, his origin shredded completely, and he could no longer maintain a humanoid shape. He began to collapse, shrinking into a useless lump. In the end, he couldn't even form a full sentence. He became a single, quivering pupil filled with chaotic color, staring at the two. King leaned down and pierced that wide, terrified pupil with a finger. I won't even let you watch. Are you mad? Destructive energy erupted from King's fingertip. God let out one final wail before dispersing into motes of light. Thus, the deity who had plotted against Earth for millennia was beaten flat by the brutal power of King and Saitama, and at last he met his end. God, deceased. Chapter 199, The Final Battle. The long river of time fell suddenly silent. King and Saitama rested on its currents, threads of countless timelines, quietly watching the countless worlds flashing by overhead. King stretched and felt utterly content. Done. That god's been completely beaten this time, he said. Saitama, relaxed, waved a fist toward the sky. He was pretty tough, though. We both hit him, and he still lasted a while. Really strong. Their easy conversation stopped as King's expression sharpened. He rose slowly. Seems things aren't over yet. Saitama also sensed a strange, immense presence entering his awareness. He clenched both fists. Still more? Like that god? At the same instant, a spherical figure wrapped in 3 pairs of pure white wings descended. King and Saitama both twitched at its appearance. An enormous eyeball, the sclera dominating the surface, dark red veins riding over it, emitting a warped, grotesque sound. Strangely, their minds translated that sound into words. You have defeated him. Your strength far exceeds that of beings in lower worlds. You cannot remain in a lower world. Accept the power of ascension and become a high-dimensional existence. From its perspective, the eyeball saw that King and Saitama had already surpassed the beings of lower worlds, even ranking among the strong in the high dimension. Because of that, it decided they could not be left in the lower world and must be taken to the high-dimensional realm. As it spoke, 2 spheres of black, shining energy appeared before them. The instant King and Saitama saw them, a yearning rose in their chests, a soul's longing to climb the hierarchy of life. King smiled at the great eyeball and reached out for the energy sphere that symbolized ascension. The eyeball expected acceptance, but King instead coated the center of his palm with surging chi and blood, then crushed the sphere in his hand. But I refuse. King's hand slammed shut, and the energy sphere shattered into countless black motes of light, utterly destroyed. Before the creature could react, Saitama and King stepped forward together and drove their fists straight into the center of its pupil. Terrifying power erupted. The eyeball had only time for a scream before it was pierced through, part of its origin shredded. Ah! The eyeball howled, its voice trembling as it watched the two approach. You can't kill me. I am a messenger. If you kill me, the entire high-dimensional world will regard you as invaders. You will have nowhere to go. Other existences in the high dimension will mark your lower world as taboo. Your universe will be plunged into misery. Stop now. It's not too late. It shouted the warning in a frantic rush, but 2 even faster fists answered. The 3 pairs of white wings dissolved into energy, and the angelic guise vanished as the eyeball died. Its origin unraveled into the laws of heaven and earth and faded away, sensing gazes and auras spreading from the long river of time, above, below, and in every corner. King and Saitama exchanged a look. What do you say? King asked, though his voice held no real question. Saitama brought his fists together at his chest, a confident, flamboyant grin on his face, his white cape fluttering behind him. King, you heard them. They want to do bad things to our universe. Of course we'll beat them all. We'll fight until no one dares to threaten anyone. With that, the bald demon king extended his fist toward King. King returned the gesture with a small smile. Their knuckles met in the void realm. Together they strode forward into the multitude of probing gazes, the uncertain auras, the murderous intent that filled the sky. Then the grand fight began. King and Saitama faced countless high-dimensional existences, beings comparable to gods or beyond. The myriad worlds shuddered that day. People everywhere sensed a battle spreading wildly across reality. The most powerful overseers of existence watched. Countless beings felt terror. Innumerable strong ones felt suddenly insignificant. This clash came to be called the final battle. No one knew how it would end, but once it concluded, the skies of every world seemed stripped of mysterious, unfathomable observers. From then on, there were no more gods in the worlds. Just like that other book about King Next Door, finishing off the gods basically means it's over. The power scale here was already insanely high. Continuing would risk blowing everything up. Thank you all for your company. I wish every reader a smooth and prosperous new year. Instant wealth, instant promotion, instant takeoff. We'll meet again if fate allows. Maybe the author will return to write One Punch Man fan fiction someday. It's the final moment. Can I get some gifts for love? Heh heh.